All right, hello. My name is Daniel Guys. I am the creative and technical director at Edie Films, and today we're going to be painting more boring trees. We are we were working on this other scene back here. We've been working on so many things and jumping all over the place. Just it's the nature the of the studio, unfortunately, and fortunately, it's kind of awesome. But we never get to finish something 100%. We were working on this painting, which I was showing you guys some of the brushes from the store and how to use those brushes. And I started adding some snow to it to help me merge the scene together. So you can see I started placing snow. I haven't really worked on it much or anything, just been using the texture brush to add some snow. But you kind of get a sense of the assets here. See, just putting in some snow bits and stuff. Starting to come together, starting to look cool. Anyways, we'll keep working on that. But for now, I have to paint some trees. Hey, Pramod, welcome to the stream. I have to paint more trees. I'm sorry. It's going to be boring. I got to paint more trees for this, which I've been working on. But now I want to show you. We have to make some more because I need some more trees that are like, I'll just show you the reference image we need to look at. And this is like, again, this is out by my home where I grew up. We need trees like this. So this tree here is kind of like a poplar type tree, I believe. And then this is sort of a birch or white birch, I think, or a paper birch. I think they might be the same species. But I need something that has a little less foliage density and are quite skinny. So far what we've made, if we check out our Maya scene, we've got these really fleshed out trees that are pretty big. They're pretty meaty. And now I need a bunch of little skinny ones. I've put the foliage in on these. And there's like a little basic camera move, just trying to test them and make sure that they're going to work okay. So I just need to make another set. So this is our A set of trees, and then I'm going to make a B set. And hopefully, for these trees, I wasn't able to use the PSD to Maya plugin that we made, so they took quite a long time to model them. I'm hoping by using the PSD to Maya plugin, we'll be able to go a lot faster. We'll have a look at that. But right now, I need to get more sparse trees that aren't so dense, because you can see these are quite dense. And we want some that look a little more fall-like, and that will require drawing some new ones. So all that intro to say, let's draw some trees. We're going to try to be really quick about these. So I'm going to do them in a row. I'm just going to do a whole bunch of them. And I'm going to keep my reference piece. So this here, I guess I'll try to put it, I guess I can put it in the program. Reference image. Let me just find this one again. Sorry, bear with me for 1 second. Where is it? File information. Where is the thing where I can just open the folder? It's probably under file information, I suppose. It's right there. Let's copy that. Sorry, this is annoying. I'm an annoying streamer, unfortunately. Okay, let's go here. Oop. We'll paste that in there. There's probably a faster way to do that. Okay, so we have some of these landscape paintings, or images, not paintings. And I just want to grab that one with this one here. Let's just drop it in there. Cool. Okay, and then we will zoom in on it a little bit. So we just want to grab this. I don't want to get too close. I'm not here to do a whole bunch of really realistic details. We just need some really fast, really nice trees that are nice and thin and skinny and can be used in the background for stuff. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to use the mop brush. I'm going to start out kind of thick because it doesn't really pick up on thinness a lot. So I'm going to start partway up the tree and then just come straight down. And because we're going to be using the Photoshop plugin, we can have the trees kind of go over top of each other a little bit. These are essentially going to become our texture tiles. And they're going to be semi-transparent, so I don't have to worry about the color of the paper. The paper is about as light as the trees are going to get. I'll probably lighten the paper a little bit. There we go. And then just do some branches. Branches take a bit of practice. Usually with branches, and we've talked about this before. I mean, I do draw a lot of trees. Branches, typically, especially with these kind of trees, when you get a change of direction or you get like a new branch, the whole thing changes direction a little bit. So you'll get these little cricks and bends in the thing. Let me get rid of that one. That one's hideous. Okay. I don't want to do too many. Again, I want to keep these trees skinny. So I want to be careful of getting too many branches. And we'll also paint some extra branches on the sides. So that we'll put like a little pool of extra branches that we can grab from to make them stick out off the trees. Let's lighten our paper a little bit too. So they're a little more birch tree-ish. Does that not? I don't feel. Oh, whoa! It's way brighter. Okay. And birch trees tend to get black at the bottom. And then of course we have our little signature birch tree spots and lines and stuff. I've got my water cranked on the brush. And I'm using mop because it gives me this nice texture. Okay, let's do another one. Well, let's start bigger. You see, most birch trees are really quite straight. They don't do a lot of swerving around or anything like that. Sometimes, depending on the species and also, I mean, as you get into trees, the more nerdy you get about it, the more you see there's so many different varieties of these things. But some of them split in the and kind of create two. They kind of curve out like that. I might do a couple of those, but I'm not sure. Mostly, when you want to make something that is tileable or you can use a lot, like repeat it a lot and use it a lot of different places, it's not good to create strong visual uniqueness between the variations. So for something like this, it's better for me to have a lot of fairly straight, uninteresting trees with somewhat similar branch setups, and that will make it more scalable and tileable. As soon as I have something like a very unique feature, it's going to make it really hard to reuse that tree somewhere because that unique feature will stand out, obviously. So if I do something where there's like a branch like that, I mean, obviously that's ridiculous, but if I do anything where there's some kind of cool shape, that will be a visual cue that you'll recognize it as a repeat object, unless I have that shape on a number of different trees. This may be obvious information, but it's stuff that I guess I've had to relearn a few times. How's your day going, Pramod? You hanging in there? I think it's going to be quiet today in the stream world. I'm slowly driving away the audience by doing all these painting streams. Okay. So I'm going to do another experiment today too with this, which I don't usually do. I'm going to try to create my alpha that I used to cut out in Photoshop in Rebelle. The reason for that is I feel like it'll make it easier to cut these things out. My day's been okay. It's been a little scattered. I've been doing lots of, I have, like, when you're doing the studio stuff, like, I'm not running the studio. I really, as a part owner, there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way of just being able to make things. I find that I end up having to do a lot of talking about stuff when really my favorite thing to do is to make stuff. So it's kind of the catch-22 if you want to run a studio, I suppose. I guess you just have to deal with that. But I like being in the trenches making things. Also, oh, thanks. Hey, Max, welcome to the stream. You're a newcomer, I suppose, to the stream. Thanks for the kind words. That's very, very nice of you to say. I'm glad you're a fan of the work. I myself am not a huge fan of my work. I'm a big fan of other people's work. Okay. Okay, sorry, this tree's a little bit thin. I'm probably gonna have to come back in on this trees a little bit and add some white because they've gotten a bit dark. I probably should be using like a lighter ink for it, but I don't know. I kind of like the mix of blacks and lights that are going to show up in this. So my goal is to get, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to try to maybe get 5, 6 trees for sure. I'll let this one dry a little bit, but I'm gonna harness a little bit of the wetness to get some of these little black areas that you can see in here. Now, birch trees also will have a mix of really black branches that are really dark black, and sometimes like white ones with white on them, like the paper on them. And that usually is the skinnier branches are usually black, and then the bigger branches have more white in them. Birch trees are really nice to use in backgrounds because typically trees are quite dark, right? So if you look at most backgrounds, especially look back here, these trees here, this is a mix of birch and pine, I think, and other things, but birch trees do some really nice, you'll get white slashes against really dark. So my bad times, what do you like? I guess it depends on what you mean the bad times. I guess there's always bad times. I feel like every time there's a good, I don't know, I kind of always expect a bad thing. And maybe that sounds like a little bit pessimistic or something, but I usually feel like good news is followed by bad news or less good news, or it's not that it doesn't equal out. I don't think there's some kind of karma balancing everything out. Not for me anyway. But I do feel like let's say I finish a film and I'm really excited. You know, like we finished Giant Bear, I'm super excited. My first instinct is to think that film won't get into any film festivals, or, you know, I tell myself, even though I want to believe it'll do really well, I tell myself that don't get your hopes up. It probably won't, because this industry is so competitive. Every time I get really excited about something, I feel like there's a part of me that reminds me that that's my excitement for something, and it doesn't necessarily represent other people's excitement for something. But even with the studio, I mean, bad times and ups and downs are constant. You know, like just a few days ago, I was feeling really bummed out about how the game engine was making the visuals for the film look. I just wasn't happy with it, and it was looking like there's not really any easy or clear ways to fix it in the engine. So it's just like, I don't know. I get excited about something. I'm all excited. Oh, cool. This shot looks super dope. I'm really excited. And oh man, the animation's looking awesome. And then I realize that something else isn't working, or I move on to the next shot and the stuff I discovered doesn't apply to that one. It's kind of constant. So I also think that has to do a lot to do with, you know, if you're trying to be an artist or trying to be a creative, there's so much failure. I feel like failure anyways. Maybe I'm being like melodramatic, but I feel like it's constant, varying degrees of failure. Oh, I see what you mean, like personal life, financial status, and compared to our friends or life. Well, you know what, that's hard too, because I mean, I'm trying to interpret your question the best I can. In our case, for instance, like when you're running the studio, you don't, at least for us at the moment, you don't make much money. Like the people you hire are typically going to be paid better than you as an owner, because I mean, if you want to keep the studio going, and it's not sound business practice. I mean, everyone tells us in business that, you know, you should pay yourself well and pay yourself first. However, there was such a need, a desire to keep the studio going, because it allowed us to do the projects we were the most excited about. So it's kind of hard, right? So we tend to have a very different, we live in a very different financials bracket than most of our friends, because a lot of our friends or peers are working full-time jobs and they get paid like a decent salary and stuff. So there's definitely a lack of our ability to participate with everybody and the same things, and to be as casual or easygoing with money, because the projects cost money and they take more time than you get paid for. Especially in most other jobs, people are paid a lot better per hour. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we shouldn't be working for free as artists for other people. But when you're working for yourself, it can be hard to prioritize your lifestyle or your comfort for your own work. I mean, I don't know. I'm a strong believer that artists should not work for free. I don't know if that answers your question, but it is, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to feel poor all the time. And that's relative too. You know, like I'm not saying we're poor because like on a global scale, we're doing totally fine. We're completely comfortable. Um, there's like people in so many different places of the world that are way worse off and struggle way more than we do. Or as so I never would ever say that we're poor by any means and our life is really lovely, but you do financially, you don't have a lot of flexibility, especially living in Canada. We live in a fairly cheap city, Montreal. If we lived in somewhere like Toronto or something, we'd be screwed. We wouldn't even be able to run this business, I don't think. I'm speaking very candidly. Like I don't know all the ins and outs. Like I'm just speaking from what my observations and what limited knowledge I have about everything in general. Pramada, you're feeling a little bit down. It sounds like you're probably hitting a bit of a low patch or something. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call these trees mostly close to finished. So all we have to do is add our whites to them. So we haven't spent too long on them. Just going to add a little more dark to them here. Because the paper, if you just click on this eye thing, you'll see they're still wet, which can be good. So that means we can do some brush strokes in there and they'll sort of bleed out a little bit. So we've got a bunch of skinny trees and a couple of ones that get a bit fatter. And I think the next thing I want to do is I have to make some branches that we can then position at different angles. So this is ultimately going to be a UV map that we can then, or sorry, like just a texture tile that we're going to use the Photoshop to Maya tool to unbend, or sorry, like to bring into the program and level it and balance it out. So I just want to add a couple more darks here, really nice darks here, because I don't have very many. It's kind of bleeding out a little too much. It's okay, we just want to hint at them, but we don't want to, I need enough contrast to make it feel like they're birch trees, not something else. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through a rough time. Like, is there anything we can do, or I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Hope you're doing okay, man. That sucks. I also don't want to like ask too many personal questions of you in a public forum. So I think it's kind of up to you to put forward what you're willing to talk about. I'm obviously no psychologist in any way, but if I can help, just let me know. If I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. Is your guys' winter kicking in? I don't know if you find that for yourself, but winter really takes a bit of the steam out of me for sure sometimes. Makes it hard to get excited about certain things. I envy all those people living in California. Sometimes. I love the fall. Do you guys have a nice fall, Pramod, where you're from? Because you're from pretty far up north, right? Or maybe I'm wrong about where you're from. I can't remember because I mix you and Pachelevic up sometimes because Pachelevic's in Russia somewhere, isn't he? Okay, so I'm just letting this sim figure itself out, but I think those trees look pretty nice. They're nice and brushy. They have some good texture to them. So let's just add another layer. So for this layer, I'm just going to come in with my pencil. I'm going to pop a little bit of white on it. So I've sampled the background color, and usually what I do is I'll like, let's say I sample the background here, and then I'll just go here and I'll just bop up the light a little bit. I'm not doing too much about warming it. Is that 20 degrees Fahrenheit or is that Celsius? The Celsius would be pretty good. Now for these trees, I might be too bright on this. These trees, I'm not going to be giving them any black outlines. I don't want them to have black outlines because these are supposed to be kind of my background trees. They're not going to be in the foreground. And I think part of the design choice for the film is that there's black outlines on a lot of stuff. Oh, that's not that bad. Where, Pramod, can I ask where you're from again? I can't remember. I'm sorry. I find that my brain doesn't really remember stuff unless I specifically commit to it, or if I have some kind of a visual reference. I think you've shown me a map or something once of where you live. Yeah. So you guys don't have the horrible winters. Do you find in your country, do you find that pursuing a path of animation or filmmaking or gaming, is it well accepted in your country, or do you find that do you find, is it something that's hard to justify, or that you have to spend a lot of time dealing like with family being like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Oh, you have it. So you're in Nepal, and Pramod, right? Pramod, I think you've shown me on a map roughly where you live, because you live in is it fairly small town, right? And I'm curious. So, like for AMAX Studios too, yeah. Okay, so Pramod, it's not that accepted for you. And AMAX, what about you? Where you're from? Is it kind of an accepted lifestyle pursuit? I think like I can speak to us here. It's a small town, yeah, that's what I thought. I think you've shown me a map of your town before. Um, in Canada, at least like in my family accept it when it's good. I think my family is actually though really good for that because my dad's an inventor and my mom's an artist. So they've never made any money though, and they kind of don't. I think they get worried because they remember how hard it is to live without money, like without a lot. You know, they just, you don't have a lot of luxuries, and they recognize how difficult that is. So for them, they've been really supportive for me, or encouraging, and but I think they do get the question every now and then, like, why are you doing this? Oh, Barcelona is raining a lot. Oh, you have trees that's similar to those ones in Barcelona. I've never been to Barcelona. I think Emily, my business partner, has been there before. I find, you know what? I find a little bit rain for me is a bit harder to deal with than snow. The constant raining drags me down a little bit, breaks my heart. Snow's tough too, but you get blue skies, right? And even the cold, you can dress up for the cold. I find when it's like rainy and wet, it's hard to do much of anything. And rain, like, when it's snowing out, you can wear a nice jacket, you can wear like a cool leather jacket, and you don't have to worry about wrecking your clothes either, if you have, I guess the thing that sucks about winter here is that you have to buy two sets of clothes all the time. You have to have warm winter clothes, and then you have to have summer clothes. So it just makes it you don't have as many options because you can't spend all your money on cool summer clothes. But anyways, and what about you, William? Do you find in Barcelona is animation and film, or is that like a relatively like accepted career path for a young person? Because even in Canada, which is it's pretty liberal and pretty forward. Well, I don't know if forward's the word. They're Canada's liberal and fairly. You have a lot of freedom of choice, I suppose. Even in Canada, though, there's a lot of people opt to government jobs because animation does not pay well. It pays well for certain people. It pays well for, you can run a studio, and if you happen to be someone who's owns it successfully, a successful studio that happens to do really well, I guess you can make money. But I don't think it's like considered a lucrative job for most people that get involved in it in Canada. But I mean, I could totally be wrong. I've never really worked in proper studios before. I think you can get paid okay. Gaming's a little bit different. I think if you're in like good lead positions in gaming, you can make some really decent money. Um, but also, I mean, it depends what kind of aspect you're getting in. In animation too, in Canada, if you decide you want to do rigging, for instance, and you're just going to be really good at rigging, there's decent money there. Because every project needs rigging, and there's a lot of studios here making films, like a lot more than there used to be anyways. So it becomes a viable career path. I think it's a little different if you decide that you want to make your own movies and your own projects. Well, that I mean, at at that point, there's a lot more resistance. I think it gets a little bit harder because then your family's like, "What are you doing? Just like get a job." You know, like, why does it have to be your ideas all the time? I watched an interesting talk. I wish I could remember what it was. I'm going to try to, I'll sum up a little bit of it. But it was talking about a little how I think a lot of, not a lot of us, but if you watch Disney movies, or like if you believe in yourself, you'll be able to do it. You can do anything. I subscribe to that in some ways, but in other ways, I think it's also important not to be beating your head against a brick wall all the time and looking at different options, different ways of doing things. Like if one way isn't working for you, you have an idea about something, it may just not be the right time. Like people might not be ready for it, or maybe the climate isn't right. Like we've been working on Elemented for a long time, and it's gotten nothing but no's for years. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Get a job, get a job. Do they how do you deal with that when they tell you that you need to get a job? Like do they understand what you're doing, or is there just a lot of like them seeing you working hard and it not really going anywhere? I guess it's a little bit easier if you're working in something like finance or something. There's like more clarity about what that's going to lead to. Okay, so I'm just getting a slightly darker white just because I want to get some like little white highlights in here. Those are probably a bit too bright, some of these here, but I want to just get a little bit of detail. I'm doing sort of backlit trees, but we have worked on this technique to use normal maps to like help light the trees, but that's not really the purpose of these trees anyways. They're not meant to be really 3D. I mean, they will be a bit, but Pramod, would you ever work for a studio? I mean, are there studios to work for? Could you like what is the closest town you could live in and actually do get a job working in animation, but where you're working on someone else's project for a little while? Unfortunately or unfortunately, I had to do that for a long time too. Is just working on other people's stuff. In fact, until I had the studio, it was really hard for me to find time to work on anything that was my own. And this is probably the first real time in my career that I have people working on my own project that I kind of not it's not like it's not mine obviously because there's so many people working on it. It's like it's really got to be really careful about how you you can't self-aggrandize your role on a project. Projects have to be very collaborative. They are very collaborative by nature. And if you're not inclined to collaboration and giving credit where credit is due and paying people for their work, it will get progressively harder and harder for you to finish your stuff. Yeah, Pramod, it might be, yeah, it's going to be hard. Like, that's far away. Could you move or is it too expensive? I mean, moving is super scary. Pramod, I don't even know how old you are, actually. Because also, depending on your age, moving is more or less options. It's scary though, because you can't, if you're living at your parents, your expenses are nice and low, so you can take more chances. But there is something to be said for. There's a saying I always hear. I've heard. I can't remember who told me. It was like this little old lady, but she said, if you want to get something done, ask a busy man to do it. And there's something to be said for being over busy and not having time for your own projects sometimes, because it just like it for some reason it can be very energizing for some people. Um, okay, so David Smith is asking, how do you balance running the studio and getting to work on projects? It's a very hard balance for me. I think there's probably other people that are better at that balance. Um, I think the only way I can really do it is because we have such good people working here. Emily largely runs the studio as far as like keeping people on task, and because there's financial part of the company. There's my part is like a relatively, we're busy, but we don't bring tons of revenue into the studio on the regular. So there's like people who are part of like financing. We're not that big. I mean, there's only, what is it? There's like 8 of us now, and only 3 of us are artists. The rest is like, 3 of us are film artists. Roxanne is she does our graphics design and supports the store. And she's also an artist. I just mean more like as far as like film production. She's not on the film production side. So all of that stuff keeps things going. But I have very little time. The only time I've managed to make projects that I get to work on of my own is by bringing them into the studio. Otherwise, I just can't make much time for my own projects. I do drawings and paintings every now and then, but I don't know if you guys, any of you who were around, like Pramod will remember, but I was working on Walkie Talkie, and that was kind of like a personal project, but it gets put aside, for all the stuff we have to do to make money. So William says, well, originally I'm from Colombia. You're living in Barcelona. Oh, cool. It feels VFX. The current status, it's not easy. Is it because it's not, is it just too cheap? Oh yeah, Pramod, you're still young. I don't know culturally for our culture in my country, being 23 and not really having all your stuff sorted out is really normal. Um, People spend a lot of time trying to figure themselves out in Canada. I mean, I'm speaking very broadly, but and I think it's because we have the luxury to do that. Sometimes it depends on whether you have a family that has some money or not. That's always a factor. My family never had much money, so we were like, you kind of didn't have much room to try to figure stuff out. So that was always a bit of a struggle. But there is no real rush. I mean, there is. I get the rush. It's hard to say, Pramod. It's such a personal thing. But for one thing for sure is if you find that you're starting to get really low and your projects aren't enough to keep you energized and happy, there's no failure in putting them on hold for a little bit and coming back to them later. Like it's not. I've been putting off projects. I wanted to work on a film back when I was like 18. 17. I wrote an entire film. I had a script. I had written up the budget. Pretty much did everything that you're kind of talking about right now, Pramod. Like I know that you've been working on your game for a long time. I had all of this stuff lined up. Even had like the gear figured out, who I'd have to hire. I had the locations all sorted out. And the reality is I couldn't find the time. And maybe that's just who I am. Maybe I never find the time. I couldn't make it work within the time and the budgets and all the stuff that I needed to do. I sometimes wonder is like, because we glorify the people that are able to really make stuff happen and just do their projects. But we also have to remember is that those people don't always have the same level of freedoms. They may have more freedom, more time, or they're driven in a different way, or the field that they're attacking is different. Sometimes too, especially when you're dealing with like games and stuff, it's all about timing, right? Like you can have the best idea in the world and make the coolest game ever, and if it's too soon, like maybe the industry's not there yet, like maybe it's some kind of game style that people don't realize they want yet. Maybe it's too different for what the market is ready for, or maybe it's not different enough, or maybe who knows? There's just so many little like climate things that change or will determine how successful a project is. Okay, so you're saying when you see your friends, you don't feel jealous, but you feel sad if have been just like those guys. Well, I guess that's relative too. Is like I hear what you're saying. I mean, my sister, and especially like some of my partner's friends, like her friends are in really good places. They've got houses, they've got a house, they've got a really good job, and life is good. Seems good, you know. Things seem good, but that stuff gets sorted out. I mean, I think one thing that helps is you can't. You do have to. Not you don't have to be, but for me, I always had to make room to be open to reinvent what my priorities were or where I saw myself. You know. And that's the only way I was able to really get through. Is like it's like okay, I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be a director, but I couldn't seem to make that work. Also, because I think I lacked the confidence to really seize opportunities like that. And so, um, what ended up happening is I just never really was able to make it happen. I remember I was doing this thing. I had this really good friend, and I had mentioned him before. He's a huge like he's doing super well in LA as a sound engineer. He's working on big albums. He's very talented. He's always been super talented. Everything he does, he's better than me at everything he does. He doesn't even have to work on it hardly ever, and he's just so good at it. Um, and he's really lovely and generous. Like there's just nothing you could fault this guy for as a friend or as a person. Um, and he went to LA and just did really well. And I didn't. I stayed back here I was trying to make movies and trying to work in film. And I used to, especially like even as little as a few years ago, would compare my success to his or my lack of success to his, looking at myself as some kind of a failure because I didn't take up the same opportunities that he had taken and wishing that I had and thinking, oh, what would my life have been like if I would have followed that? Oh, UT, you lost your job. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that. That is sad. I'm sorry, guys. There's bad news everywhere. Life. Oh my gosh. I wish I could offer some really sage advice for you guys. One thing I can say, unless I don't know how old you guys are, how old people are on the stream, but when you're young and you're relatively healthy, you these things you can overcome them. Like you're still very capable, right? And you're only going to get smarter, you're going to get better at the jobs you're doing. You just have to keep going. But oh, for the prairie grass? Okay, so cool. Hey Pachalovic, welcome to the stream. It's okay to go off topic. It's no problem at all. And please feel free to keep talking amongst yourselves, of course. The prairie grass animation. Do you mean the stuff that's on the store, or do you mean something else? Because usually what I do, Amax, is I actually use Maya, and I create paint effects in Maya to actually do those things. So I don't find that in After Effects trying to animate grass and stuff looks very good. Um, I find that it's just like it just doesn't seem very dynamic, and the paint effects in Maya are just infinitely better. That's why I put them on the store, is because it took me a while to learn how to do it, and I was just kind of like, there's like people could just buy them and have them. So I never got grass to work super well in After Effects. Like I tried turbulent displace, I would try bending effect, and then it always looked a little bit just cheap and digital. So that's why I made anyways. That's why those assets are on the store essentially, is because they're much better, they look better, and you're never going to achieve anything even close to that, at least in my opinion, trying to make After Effects do it unless you hand animate it. Okay, so I think these trees have enough going on. I might do one more little black pass. Sorry guys, I got lost track of things chatting away. I'm just gonna put a couple little darker details in here. Is the auto sway? I haven't used auto sway. Would you guys like would you use it in After Effects? But you have to do like individual grasses, I guess, because that's the other thing. I could animate a single piece of grass pretty nice using the puppet tool, or even using like the puppet tool mixed with turbulent space and mixed with a bunch of other things. But it was certainly hard to make a whole big field of grasses. But I'm sure you could do it. Like I don't think there's any reason you couldn't be able to do it. It's just a matter of economy of time and what you're willing to put your effort into. And I think because I knew Maya pretty well already, or I had done it before, it was just seemed like an obvious answer for me to go there. Just trying to. Okay, here. Just gonna go here. Sorry, we're just about done. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on these, and I've already spent too much time on them. I know I have. And I'm sorry about that. It's a couple little lines here and there. I don't think we need those little black marks. Those aren't helping. Okay, good. I think we're good. All right, so now I just need to make a couple of branches. We need to make a branch pass and just some leaves, and then we're going to be good. Oh, that's cool. So it'll do an auto. Will the auto sway thing stagger them for you too, or do you have to stagger them manually? Like, will it make it so that they don't all go in uniformly the same? I'm assuming it must. I'm just gonna do a couple little light patches here and there. Sorry guys, I can't stop working on stuff. Almost done. Okay, I think this looks pretty sweet. This light edge is a bit weird, but kind of needed it to fill up that backside a little bit. Oops. I'm accidentally doing some Photoshop shortcuts. Let's just do this really quick and bring this tree out a little bit more. There we go. Who cares? Okay, cool. Looks good. All right, now we need to do some branches. We can probably merge all these together. Just merge all that. Bonk. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to do some branches, and then I'm going to be done. Oh, Pramod, are you like embarrassed or something? Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. That's what man, it doesn't matter. It's not a tutorial, it's a stream. And it's not, you know what, Pramod, that's the other thing I think that's important to remember is all of us who are trying to make a stab at something in this business, all of us have to deal with these things. All of us have to deal with the feelings of failure, of struggle. So I think having somebody who's willing to share their struggle and talk about it and get the conversation going, I think it's really valuable because we're all going to hit that. And even actually, Emily was just hanging with the guys, and I don't want to it was the guys who worked on Madame Tootly Pootly. Have you guys seen that short, Madame Tootly Pootly? If you haven't, I really strongly encourage you to check it out. It's really beautiful. These guys were like rising stars, huge Canadian animation stars. Not even Canadian, they were international. They were getting a television deal with HBO. They were working on a feature film. There was so much stuff going on for them. The world was just getting huge for them. But anyways, everything was going super well, and then all of a sudden, just one thing after the other, the project started failing. The HBO deal got dropped. Some of their personal stuff they were trying to do wasn't happening and not being picked up anymore. And they went from being the biggest things in stop motion animation, one of the biggest people in stop motion animation, to having to just be do service for. They were doing service for Cirque du Soleil, and granted, they're cool projects, but these guys are so fundamentally artists. I don't think it was easy for them to have to suck that up, So that was hard. And these guys are established. They're not young men. I mean, these guys I think they're probably in their mid to late 40s now. And yeah, they got hit hard. And I think they've also struggled too for so long because they just didn't make much money. Even in Canada, if you make a successful film, chances of you actually making money off that film or getting any kind of wealth from it are pretty low. It's we don't have the same population, obviously, as the States, as America. And plus, we get a lot of grants and stuff, which seem really cool at first. But what can also happen because of grants is you get caught up in living on the grant system, and the grants don't pay you very well. Like you'll be expected to do a feature film for just a few $1 million, where in the States you can do a feature film for tens of millions, or the expectations are different. So Canadian productions have a tendency to look a little bit cheaper, not be just they just don't seem as nice or good or as high quality. And I would say that that's probably one of the reasons. I'm speaking from no real place of authority. It's just from accumulated information over the years, and some of it could be wrong. But anyways, Pramod, all that to say, I think it's very helpful for people to share their struggles. I don't think it's a waste of time, especially on a stream where people are coming to try to learn how to do animation and art, because that is the kind of stuff you have to deal with on a regular basis. So I'm glad you shared. Okay, so we're just gonna finish these. I'm just jamming all this stuff in. I'm trying to do it on one UV map, one texture tile. I don't want to have a ton of different materials. I think I should be able to work around it. Oh, thanks, Max. That's nice of you to say. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You're making me turn all red. Thankfully, the camera's too blue and you can't tell. I guess just one last thing, Pramod, just as a thought for you, and it's not something that you have to do ever. Like it's something you have to figure it out on your own. But just because if you do go work for a big company and get a job, you don't have to stay there. It's not going to fundamentally change who you are as a person. So if you're driven to make your own projects, even if you're there at that company job for a couple of years or something, saving money, you're still going to find a way to work on your own little projects. You're going to be stewing on your ideas, instead of being on like Facebook and messaging friends or whatever it is people are doing, or instant messaging. You're going to be thinking of your project ideas. Like people in general in big companies aren't super productive, and there's a lot of room and a lot of space to kind of work on other things. It's just most people generally aren't doing that kind of stuff. Most people aren't creatively driven to have their own projects, or it's like when people work at big companies, say they're not a creative person specifically, but they want to buy a new boat, or they're like, they're into a new video game, and they're kind of sneaking time in there. They're watching YouTube videos of this video game that they love while they're at work. This is all stuff that goes on in regular corporate culture. So I think it's also important not to be too anti-corporate, because it's still there. Like a little bit of time there won't take away your drive or creativity or your relevance as an artist or a creator. Even if you have to slow down a little bit, if it's at the expense, if your project is causing enough emotional duress to make it hard to even create anymore, you need a lot of energy for projects. They take up a lot of time. They take up years and years and years. Even games by the remember like Owl? Did you guys ever play the Owl Boy one? It's a beautiful game. It took them like 10 years to make that game. Probably because they couldn't do it full time, but also I think they had to re-engineer it at some point. But I think you got to be careful too of just being everyone has to be careful of that, of being too one or the other, right? Like you can't, I think it's important not to like sign yourself out of other ways of having to live just because it doesn't look like it's an obvious fit for your passions or ideas. It's just saying, I'm not sure. Like I think we've all done jobs we don't really want to do. Clearly you're doing jobs that you don't really want to do either. It sounds like you're already you're doing the cable job. I mean, that stuff's not super fun. But I can tell you right now, no job that you get is going to take away your creative ambition or your drive, especially if that's the kind of person. Like you can't project yourself, I can't either, that I would if I had to get a job with the government for a while, that all of a sudden my interest in doing film would just disappear. But maybe it would, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple whites on these branches. These are weird. I know it looks like a total mess, but we're going to use this. It's going to be useful. You'll see. I'm going to just put, I have to fix one thing because these branches have to come out from somewhere. I don't want them to be coming straight out of the tree. I need them to be able to merge down a bit. So some of them I have to give them a little swoop in a bit. Okay, cool. So we have a ton of little branches. And then we'll make a new layer of, we'll make a new layer of little foliages and stuff like that. Okay. I might just do a couple little tiny black branches. This is ridiculous. This is going to be, thankfully we have the plugin because this will help us, well, this will help me anyways get all these silly little branches dealt with. Okay. Cool, guys. Okay, cool. There. All right, now this is going to be a little bit hard to model around. Hopefully we can figure this out. Okay, but they are on a separate layer just in case. So if I can't make it work, I can always shut these guys off and just grab all these hilarious little branches. The only thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of white here and there just to lock them in a little. I want to be careful though because I don't want to give too much of a clear top or bottom side to it because that'll make them less useful. They won't be as flexible. So I kind of need to think of them as less, I need to think of them as not having a specific top or bottom. I have to be careful with that. So we'll see. Maybe I'll wreck it. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. The other thing we're finding in the game engine is the game engines don't really like alpha channels. They hate them so far. We're trying to find a way around this. But because of that, I can't have these really nice painterly alpha channels. I have to have something solid underneath all this. So it makes it so I can't do as cool of things with my branches that I wanted to. Okay, almost there. Sorry guys, I know this is so boring. Good God. Animation. I have the guys are all working on incorporating this stuff into the game engine. So I gotta keep things rolling along here so they have stuff to work with. And I'm testing it in Maya just to make sure the generals are working good. Maya's real-time viewport is not ideal, but it's enough to get an idea of how things are working. Okay, and we'll do a couple blacks here, I think. Might just do a couple little core shadowy things. Just to give us an anchor point. Maybe shade that off a little bit. No outlines. I forgot my own rule. No outlines. Okay, so hopefully we can move out of this program very fast. I've kept you guys on these stupid trees for so long. Okay, cool. All right, I think we're close. Let's fix this one. This one could use a little bit of something there. All right, so let's see how this is going to look. Okay, so the next thing we have to do, this is what I'm thinking anyways, is put some kind of a solid underneath all this stuff to make it so it's easier to cut out and it has a nice organic edge. We can do that in Photoshop, but I did want to try to do it in here just to see if we would get a better edge on things. I'm not sure. Like, it might be more interesting. So I'm just going to go to the color and I'm going to pick a crazy color. And this is what I thought of doing, is going along all this stuff. I know this is going to be super boring, but there's not really a good way to do this automatically in Photoshop. I mean, you can use the wand, the magic wand, but it really makes a messy edge. And plus it creeps in on everything. You can change the settings a lot, of course, but I just want to try this on just a couple and we'll see if it works. Because the amount of time I'm going to spend fixing the selection masks and stuff might not be worth what we'll get from just doing this. Although we have a lot of branches to deal with, so let's just try it. I'll try to be super fast. And the thing is I'm going to be okay with is a little bit of a messy alpha. It's okay. Okay. Uh-oh, something's happening. Why isn't it painting? There we go. Okay. Oh, this is going to be slow. All right, I'll try. I won't do this. I was going to do it. I think it'll take too long. In my brain, it seemed like it would go way faster than this, and it's not going very fast. So we'll just not do it. We'll do it for one, and if it's clearly a major time saver, we'll use it on all the other ones. But right now, it seems like it's going to take us like a minute at least per tree, which would be super boring and not fun to watch. Let's see how long it takes us to do a branch. Yeah, I don't want to get into having to erase stuff and clean it. This will take forever. We might be better off just doing the control click method and making, oh no, it's saving. Almost there, sorry guys. Come on. Slow saves. Rebelle is a bit slow on the save for sure. I know it's processing a lot though. Definitely one of my favorite painting programs. Okay, so we've done a branch. We'll just have a look and see how that feels. But it might be faster just to do our alphas. We'll just do this as like a test mask. Okay, this is tree trunks. Tree trunks. Okay, so last thing is, let's merge these two together. Junk. These are branches, obviously. Branches. And then we're just going to do a couple little spatters of leafy things, okay? So I've made some leafy brushes. I'm going to keep the tree trunks on for now. I'll fade them down just so I can see them. And we'll just do some, we have this brush, and I've got some like little leafy things I've made. Some of them look better than others, but they're not the best. But I'm going to look at, if I keep them nice and wet with a good loading, we should be able to get some decent little spats here and there. Yeah, that's, I guess, Pramad's been talking all about that thing. Pramad's like, you gotta use the grease pencil. I'm not avoiding it intentionally. It's just, it's not my medium yet, but it looks amazing. I was checking out some of those videos. It's sickeningly cool. It makes me very sick and jealous. Okay, what I'm gonna do really quick, because there's a lot of repetition in that shape. I've got other things we can use for this, but I'm just gonna throw some water on the canvas, and that'll help make some of the edges of our foliage bleed off a little bit. And I'm thinking I'll paint the foliage directly on the trees for now, just so then I don't have to manually place all of it. We'll see. I might just like, we'll make it so it's broken up enough that we can use it over and over and over again. Oh, Pramod, I haven't checked out the link yet. I'm the worst. I know. I haven't even had a chance. I'm going to check that out, though. Pramod sent a link for checking out some of the features that I haven't looked at yet. Okay. So that'll cover these guys, I think. So we're just going to make a whole bunch of these, and then I'll do more down here. So now that we've watered these, we can leave the water eyeball on. Sometimes useful, but the thing I find about it is it makes it so I can't really see what I'm doing. So I've got a few different leafy textures, some better than others. I'm not really sure. They're very repetitive when they're sparse like this. So I just have to be careful. But I need them sparse. Like I need some sparse leaves. I don't have very many. I'm just not sure how I'll like. I'm gonna kind of look at the painting or the image more than my painting actually. I just want to get some like, see how repetitive those edges are? I'm hoping that they bleed out a little bit. Get some density in there. They're going to look bad for a bit until they fade off, until they bleed out more. I'm trying to flip my brush around as much as I possibly can. Did you guys see the hero short that they've been doing in Blender? I'm assuming you must have seen it. Where they're using the grease pencil. Someone used the grease pencil. Oh, and I want to show you guys. There's this guy I know. He's really crazy. He's genius. He made a feature film all by himself. Like, speaking of things that make you sick to your stomach and feel unworthy. He's so crazy. He made it all in like Photoshop with, I think he mixed a bit of Blender in it. I'm going to find it for you guys so you guys can check it out while I'm doing these really boring trees. Like, these kind of look horrible, but I'm hoping they bleed out a little bit. They should bleed out. So you notice they are bleeding out a bit. I'll just have to go around some of the edges and touch some things up here and there. Hopefully I can separate these out into like interesting shapes that we can use. But I'm going to find this thing, okay? So if you just bear with me for 1 second. It's called, that's not what I want. That's the dashboard. We need that to stay there. Bear with me 1 second. It's called, what is it called? It's called the fish bowl. Short. I think it's called the fish bowl or the wishing jar. It's called the wishing jar. The wishing jar. Okay, so it's this crazy animated short that Denver Jackson made. And he makes me sick to my guts. He animated it all by himself. So prepare to be depressed. Prepare to be depressed. Oh my God, it sounds amazing. Yeah, the grease pencil is gonna kill everything. But guys, check out this trailer, or check out this film if you can. He's working on another feature right now. He makes me so jealous. Yeah. Let's get depressed. Let's get ruined from this guy that made this film all by himself. In Photoshop. He didn't even use TV Paint or anything. Anyways, we'll just scrub through it. I want you guys to watch the trailer. You guys can watch it and sort of experience it yourself, but it's sickening. It makes me sick. So you guys should watch that. It makes me sick. I hate it. I hate it and I love it. And Denver is so lovely. He's like such a nice guy. And so generous. Like, man, it's like you kind of almost want people that are that brilliant to be kind of rotten or something. So you can be like, well, they may be good at what they do, but they're kind of an asshole. But not Denver. Okay, so I'm just going to go in with this other brush on some of the edges and give the silhouette some variety. Oh, you've been following them? Oh, they're really cool. We were hanging out with them on at the Ottawa Animation Festival. They're so nice and really funny. And Denver is so generous with his knowledge. And man, I learned so much from him just from talking to him for just a few minutes. He's just crazy, and he works so hard. He lives at home. It's crazy. I think he still lives with his mom. And he's still pretty young. Like he's older. I don't know. I think he's got to be in his 30s, but he's still like early 30s, but he's still young. But it makes me sick. It makes me sick. It makes me so sick. In a good way. I mean, I'm jealous in a good way. And maybe a little bit of a bad way. Excuse me. I don't like some of these clumps. They're way too clumpy. We might have to try one more time. I don't feel like this brush that I used worked very well. Oh, hello, Newfoundland. Welcome to the stream again. I think you've been on once before. Central Motion Graphics and Design. Well, welcome to the stream. Thanks for coming on. We're just hanging out, making leaves, making trees. So I'm just going to try to make these little clumps. I wasn't happy with the ones we made before, so I'm just going to make a few clumps. I'm not going to try to think of the trees specifically, but I want these to be sparse clumps. Sort of broken up ones that are sort of similar to what we're seeing here. Now, these leaves are a little bit wrong, but they might give us the base to get started with. So I'm trying to look at this tree mostly and seeing these like clumpy groupings that I can then stick in front of and around other trees. Okay, so I've done those ones. So maybe I can just go here with this one and throw in a couple of these shapes. There's not really a random, well, there is a bit of a random, but there's not like a flip thing in the Rebelle brushes, which make it a little bit harder to avoid the tiling look. Okay, we might wet the layer a little bit around these guys now. Oh, it's saving. Come on, thing. Go. Oh, it's really saving for a long time. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to wet around them. And then I'll paint again about them just to kill off some of these hard silhouette edges. This is going to be hard. These are, I'm really struggling with the leaf formations, unfortunately. This one's not working so good because it's got a big stick in it. Let's try this one. This one is actually a photo of birch leaves that I found. Like if we look at it, you see that silhouette. I just pulled that from online. Okay, well, it's a little better, I think. I'm just going to give it a little bit of volume, so a shift from light to dark. Okay, so let's do, maybe let's get this mop brush maybe, or we could use the splat brush, but it tends to make kind of a mess. But maybe we'll do a couple of these and get it good and wet in there, and then I'll like try, I'm just going to try because I might end up just erasing all this. Yeah, that looks pretty terrible. There's not enough water around it to make that work. Maybe. Let's see what happens. This is like a really dark clump though. I suppose what we could do to paint on this as well is get some extra more leafy patterns to use on more things. Let's just use it. Let's just go with it. Let's just make a bunch of splatty ones too. That's maybe too thin. Okay, that's okay. We'll let that go. And then we'll just pop in with a leaf on it. And see what the merging of those two mushy things will create. The trick will be getting a nice variety of shapes and not always making something that's too round. Oh, Quebec is far from Montreal. Quebec is about 3 hours, I think. It's about 3 hours. But if you are going with the mind of any work stuff, there's so much work-related stuff in Montreal. It's a very big, busy place for this kind of business. So if you do have the time, it is worth checking out. And of course, if you are in the neighborhood, we will always welcome you to come swing by the studio. I've had people come by here before. It's always nice to have people who've been on the streams come to hang out. Colin Harvey's been here several times. We actually worked with him on a couple little projects too, which was really nice. I haven't worked with him for a bit though. Things have been so crazy busy. But that always happens. Things always get busy. It's just the nature of the business. Okay, so let's do a couple more. I want to grab a little bit of the looseness of these like leaf chunks somehow. I'm not finding my various approaches that I've tried have created specifically. I've gotten close a couple times, but they haven't necessarily gotten the exact feeling I was going for, but we'll see. We'll keep trying. All of this stuff will be useful. I feel like we'll be able to use this for bushes and stuff too. Okay, and let that bleed off for a bit. And let's do, what do we have here? This. A couple of big chunks. We need some like different shaped ones. I think we need some like longer, like kind of like long splatty things that aren't so round. Yeah, well, if you end up out, Hero, just let us know. Like, shoot us. Just let us know. Let us know. I always, whenever I go to anywhere in the world, which isn't very often, I just like working too much. I try to always visit some studios and mix work in there a little bit. We have these sticks. We could throw some sticks in here. We do have to make some bushes and stuff eventually. Let's throw some little sticks in. Notice how the sticks just sort of evaporate because there's so much water in there. These are cool though. Some of these are cool. I might dash a couple of splats on these guys here. I'm a little nervous because it could wreck them. Are they still wet enough? Yeah, they're wet. They're still receiving some. I just want to make sure that they kill off a little bit of the intensity of the splat. Otherwise, you get these really hard edge splats everywhere. But no, they're still wet. That'll maybe give us some of that looser, leafy feeling we're looking for. Okay, and I'm going to do, what have we done? We've done a patch here, patch there, there. Let's just do a couple more little things. Just want to get a couple more clusters that we can then harness and use somehow if it suits us. This is a long one. Put some leafiness. I'm going to make these ones nice and dense. Not dense, but like some dark ink in there. Okay, and then a couple of these little leafy guys like this, just out on the edges. Hopefully they water away a bit. Okay, so those might be good. I'm just going to let those dry out for a little bit. And then I think we can start the next thing. I'm hoping they're useful. I feel like once they're all stacked in there, they probably will work. That's one of the, I guess it's one of the kind of things that's hard about this program is your brushes really can't get that big. Okay. I think I'm going to do is I'm going to split the stream up a little bit because I feel like this stream has been pretty long and we've painted in Rebelle. So I think what I'll do for the next stage of bringing it all into Photoshop and stuff is I'll split this off. Yeah, I like the ink splats in there too. I think it'll help the look because I've done a bunch that don't really have that in there. Like in the Maya file, these guys don't really have any little splats in them. They're pretty uniform. Now this could change, right? Like right now, this is really dense and it doesn't look super good. A lot because I don't think these leaves are receiving lighting the way I'd like, and shading. They're really flat. But that can all be changed. I mean, right now this is a very flat, static kind of poorly lit thing. And I don't know, but I feel like their material on here is not ideal. Whatever the material is on here, this tree texture, I feel like it could use, it could use some work. Translucence is nice. Let's put that up. Because I almost feel like it's not casting shadows on itself properly. because I see but anyways, once you have it properly lit, we'll get edge lighting and all kinds of stuff, and we'll be able to do color stuff. Oh, the new Lion King. I forgot about that movie. Cool. I forgot about it. What do you guys think of it? Okay, and what'll be nice about these little leafy things too, now that I'm just articulating it, is I'll be able to put them in front on some of these bigger trees and mix it in to give them a little more variety. Okay, guys, I'm gonna stop the stream before I think anyways, the Rebelle painting is finished. So let's just save it. I think it's pretty good the way it is. We'll just save it out, and then we'll bring it into. Then I'll come back online and we'll put it all together, so that we have our textures ready to go, and then we'll do the export. So, yeah, I think. Oh, really quick, Hero. This is really raw. It's more just reference, and I think it looks a little better if you put some hardware fog on it. I think the real thing here is that the foliage looks really dense and flat. It doesn't have any color variation, and Maya is not great at making color variation on a material. You kind of have to have separate materials, but in the game engine, we can create per tree variations on the actual color. So I can make them lighter and darker depending on a whole bunch of different factors. I can even randomize it a bit. So that'll help the trees clump together better. Plus the lighting will affect them better because Maya doesn't have a really good lighting engine in real time either. So I think the main goal is if I can at least make it look okay in here, it's going to work in the engine. And I might just have to trim some stuff. That's the other thing, is I might have too much stuff because the trees by themselves might look a little sparse. But once they're in the scene, they start to get a bit heavy and globby. So that's stuff that we'll be pruning them a little bit. But okay, guys, I'm going to sign off the stream for a little bit, and then I'll come back on we'll convert those trees into assets that we can use in Maya. So that'll be the next one. So I'll talk to you guys in just a little bit. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'll come back. Whoops. And yeah, watch that trailer if you want. It's sickening.